For months, Canada and the U.S. worked to mend trade relations after years of tension, notably the 2018 tariff war started by Donald Trump. This period followed significant trade disputes, including tariffs on steel and aluminum, straining economic ties. Recently, Mark Carney, Canada's new Prime Minister, announced a new chapter in the partnership. Negotiations were advancing, with a new agreement scheduled for a Halloween summit. Everything seemed to be proceeding smoothly, anticipating renewed cooperation and stability. Then, unexpectedly, a shocking development turned the situation upside down. The news emerged from Ontario's provincial government, which launched a political advertisement. The ad used dramatic music and cinematic style, nothing out of the ordinary for political messaging. But what stunned everyone was its inclusion of an old scene of 1980s U.S. President Ronald Reagan condemning tariffs. The implication was plain. Even an American leader from the past opposed import taxes, so the U.S. should practice what it preaches. To Donald Trump, it felt like a personal affront, as if to say, "You are wrong," and Reagan, your party's hero, was correct. It challenged the core of Trump's trade belief, that tariffs safeguard American products and create U.S. jobs. That argument seems plausible superficially, but economically it is flawed, as Reagan cautioned long ago. Tariffs may initially protect domestic sectors, yet they often trigger trade conflicts. Other countries retaliate, prices rise, companies struggle, employment falls, and all sides lose. We saw this in the 2018 U.S. China trade war, which cost America an estimated $300 billion in losses. This trade war also led to nearly 300,000 job losses and a 0.3% reduction in real GDP for the U.S. economy. So when Trump saw Ontario's ad, he was furious, accusing Canada of assailing U.S. trade policy on Truth Social. Immediately, he ended all trade discussions, months of diplomacy undone by a brief video. Compounding the problem, the Ronald Reagan Foundation later stated, the ad was deceptive. The audio was edited and used without permission. Ontario's daring tactic had failed entirely, despite its $75 million cost. Now, the critical questions remain. Why did one advertisement provoke such a strong reaction? And how could a single media piece disrupt trade talks between two nations that together account for more than 28% of the world's GDP? This incident underscores the delicate balance of international relations and the unexpected power of political messaging in a globalized world. If you're new to our channel, we explore all aspects of the economy, from global financial analysis and future forecasts to key worldwide developments. So don't forget to hit subscribe. Now, returning to our story. The border between Canada and the United States is the most active trade corridor globally. Their bilateral trade totals approximately $800 billion annually. The U.S. is a cornerstone of the Canadian economy, and Canada is the leading supplier of energy to the U.S., providing oil, gas, minerals, and lumber. Consequently, any escalation in tensions poses a severe threat to Canada's economic stability. Why is this the case? Canada's economy is deeply dependent on exports, with the vast majority destined for the United States. For its part, America also relies on Canada, particularly as it gradually decouples from China. The U.S. is reshoring supply chains to trusted, nearby allies, a strategy where Canada is a crucial partner. So what caused the breakdown? Political maneuvering interfered. Ontario's government attempted to bolster domestic popularity by resisting tariffs that had damaged its steel and automotive sectors. However, the strategy failed spectacularly. Trump interpreted the ad as a personal provocation and immediately terminated the talks. Following the controversy, the Reagan Foundation issued a statement. "We were not consulted in this matter, nor did we grant consent for the use of President Reagan's recording. We are exploring legal options, as our role is not to engage in political advocacy or counsel nations. Our duty is to preserve President Reagan's legacy, not to see it weaponized in commercial negotiations." For the Foundation, this was not a political issue, but one of safeguarding historical integrity and reputation. And honestly, that is a reasonable position. Nonetheless, the ad's consequences were vastly more significant than anyone anticipated. After all, it was merely a single advertisement, produced by a regional government, not the federal one. But Trump perceived it as a direct insult, an affront to him, and a challenge to his Republican base, which reveres Reagan. Therefore, in retaliation, he called off all trade discussions between the two nations. For months, talks focused on resolving one of Canada's most significant economic problems from the last year. The United States had imposed heavy tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and automotive components. Duties as high as 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum crippled a crucial industrial sector for Canada. This industry supports about 550,000 jobs, largely in Ontario, Canada's automotive center, with factories like GM and Ford. Auto manufacturing requires parts to cross the border repeatedly, over 7 times on average per car. Any new tariff or delay immediately increases expenses for producers and, ultimately, consumers. Canada's auto production dropped by nearly 11% in 2024 due to higher costs and disrupted supply lines. Rather than fury, Canada chose a calculated, diplomatic path. Officials engaged in months of quiet discussion to remove tariffs, restore stability, and save jobs. An agreement was almost complete, scheduled for signature at the APEC summit, symbolizing a reboot of Canada-U.S. relations. This raised a fundamental question. Does the United States see Canada as a genuine partner or merely a subordinate? Mark Carney worked to present Canada as a competent ally with fiscal discipline and economic resilience. However, as the agreement neared completion, Ontario published its ad, and the entire framework collapsed. Trump's response was immediate, canceling negotiations, motivated by emotion and a social media firestorm. The people who will pay the price are assembly line workers, plant engineers, small business owners, and households. These individuals are simply trying to make a living, rendering the episode profoundly juvenile. This exposed a serious rift within Canada's own borders. Ontario, Canada's industrial core, is deeply linked to U.S. trade. However, in Alberta, the economy is powered by oil, gas, and the oil sands. Many there believe the federal government in Ottawa is overly focused on the East and ignores the West. When this crisis emerged, Alberta questioned why the government acted for Ontario, but not when oil prices crashed. A perception is strengthening that the government favors major Eastern industries over Western energy workers. Let's discuss Quebec, a province with a unique identity, deeply rooted in its French language and rich culture. This distinctiveness leads many in Quebec to perceive themselves as separate from the rest of Canada, fostering cultural independence. Many in Quebec contend that Canada's economic reliance on the United States is a dangerous strategy, creating vulnerabilities. They advocate for expanding trade partnerships with European nations, particularly France and Germany, over an unbalanced relationship with the U.S. This perspective highlights wider social and economic splits within the nation, revealing diverse viewpoints on Canada's international trade policies. In global hubs like Toronto and Vancouver, the economy is seen through an international lens, driven by worldwide markets. However, in smaller factory towns, the view is direct. They imposed tariffs, and we lost our jobs. It's that simple. Consider Saskatchewan and Manitoba, where the economy is powered by agriculture and exports, making them dependent on U.S. trade. Recent tariffs impacted more than just automobiles. They targeted essential products like tractors, grain, and beef that crossed the border daily. It wasn't merely one industry that suffered. Multiple pillars of the Canadian economy were under immense pressure, highlighting widespread vulnerability. Turning to domestic politics, an ad exposed a major rift inside Canada's Conservative Party, revealing differing approaches to international relations. Doug Ford, who supported the ad, is a right-leaning conservative focused on safeguarding Canadian employment. Other conservatives believe preserving stable relations with the U.S. was the higher priority, creating a significant division within the party. On the left, the NDP argued, this proves that these tariff policies are harming workers across the board, advocating for broader worker protection. Each political group attempted to leverage the crisis for its own gain, highlighting their distinct platforms. Beneath this conflict, a profound transformation is underway, signaling a fundamental shift in Canada's long-term economic strategy. Canada is reevaluating the wisdom of anchoring its entire economy so heavily to the United States. recognizing inherent risks. A single political change in Washington can cripple an entire Canadian sector, demonstrating the fragility of over-reliance. This is precisely why Canada has begun signing fresh trade agreements and actively cultivating new markets with diverse nations. These efforts include strengthening ties with Japan, South Korea, Denmark, the Netherlands, and India, diversifying its global economic footprint. This strategic effort is about fundamentally redesigning Canada's economic blueprint for long-term stability and resilience. The goal is to ensure Canada is never again held hostage by the impulses of a U.S. president, securing its economic sovereignty. And that is the central lesson: the importance of diversification and strategic independence in a globalized economy. If you are new to our channel, we analyze all aspects of the world economy, so please subscribe to stay updated.